Welcome to Intuitive Astrology with Molly McCord. Thank you so much for joining me today as we're going to focus on the energies of Jupiter retrograde in Gemini. This occurs every year for about 4 months, and we'll have Jupiter station retrograde at 21 degrees of Gemini on October 9th, 2024, and voyage back to 11 degrees of Gemini until February 3rd, 2025. Because this retrograde begins later on in the calendar year, it also means that we'll be starting 2025 with planets in retrograde, specifically Jupiter, Mars, and Uranus all in retrograde, which is just a good heads up to have for your planning as well as expectations of the new year. Now, with this particular retrograde, Jupiter is going to have the second square to Saturn in Pisces. That will happen on December 24th and 25th at 14 degrees. 14 degrees of Gemini and 14 degrees of Pisces. I will be touching on that in today's show. And the other significant transit we're going to experience during this Jupiter retrograde phase involves Mercury being retrograde in Sagittarius, which will start November 25th at 22 degrees of Sagittarius and last until December 16th, staying in Sagittarius, which means that this Mercury in Sagittarius will be opposing Jupiter retrograde in Gemini, and Gemini is ruled by Mercury. So the ruling planet opposing Jupiter retrograde in Gemini means there's going to be a lot we need to stay adaptable to. A lot of changes, a lot of perspective shifts, a lot of information, declarations, announcements, and then reversals, shifts and changes. And this could feel like we are really figuring out what's true, what's real, what's honest. It also means the cognitive dissonance is going to be ramped up. And in basic terms, the cognitive dissonance is when you believe something or you have information about something that is different and contradicts whatever is being revealed, spoken, or shared. Two contradictory belief systems are occurring and being revealed. Now, in addition to these energies of Jupiter retrograde in Gemini, plus the upcoming Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius, we also have that Saturn in Pisces plus Neptune in Pisces. Now, Jupiter does not interact directly with Neptune in Pisces, but we have a strong influence here of mutable signs. Mutable signs require us to be willing to shift up, to shift and stay open to what we didn't know, what we didn't understand, to stay curious and to not be locked in to any one particular outcome, expectation, idea, or concept. You get the idea. With these mutable signs, they occur astrologically after the fixed signs. So what they're wanting us to do is to say, okay, this is what you've relied on. This is what has stabilized you. It's changing, and it requires you to change with it. And it's in that ability to remain open and adaptable to doing something differently and to be able to let go of what previously existed that also moves you towards the next modality, which is the cardinal signs. And those are the initiators and beginners of the 4 seasons of our calendar year and the natural cycle. So we are transitioning into new beginnings, and the focal point, October, November, December, January, is to look at where you are able to stay open to what you didn't know and to be adaptable in your energy, which can also feel very uncomfortable. You might find yourself ignoring, resisting, denying, or avoiding certain changes. And I feel the bigger picture here at a cosmic level is that we are moving into faster moving energies. The acceleration on the planet is going to continue, and our old ways of knowing ourselves and living are ending, are being phased out as we have these overlapping energies that are taking us further into new frequencies, new experiences, and new realities. So we are very much in between realms, and you could feel that more regularly. I think that this particular Jupiter retrograde in Gemini is going to highlight the overlapping timelines that we are coexisting in, and even feeling like we're split at times, and that we could feel heavily involved in one timeline and then realize it isn't the direction you're going, it doesn't serve you in these new energies that are coming in, and so we can feel split. Gemini is the sign of the twins. It's the sign of duality. It represents both hemispheres of the mind. And you could feel that you are learning how to be stronger and more balanced in your energy field that has been split or perhaps more heavily developed in one area rather than another. So just as you are perhaps stronger writing with your right hand, you're learning how to do so with your left hand. If your energy has performed better in the left hemisphere of the brain, you're learning that, hey, there's good stuff in the right hemisphere of the brain too, and vice versa. This Jupiter retrograde in Gemini is asking you to come into more of your capabilities that maybe you haven't fully developed, and that ability to step into them and to honor them is what's going to help the energy move. It's also going to support you in remaining connected to the bigger picture of what's unfolding. So we say that Jupiter in Gemini is in its detriment, and that's because Gemini is opposite of Sagittarius and Jupiter is ruled by Sagittarius. This is the energy of expansion and growth, the big picture, what lights you up, what shows you where you're going, what your belief systems are about that, what experiences you've had in the real world that have formed your belief systems and understanding of how the world exists. Jupiter is also about opinions, the opinions we form based on information, experiences, what we think and perceive, and how that creates our perception and our ideologies. How it shows us different philosophies and ways of viewing the world, that there are multiple ways of understanding our world and all the various topics in it. Yet at an individual level, you're understanding what resonates for you. And so when Jupiter is in Gemini, Gemini takes all of those big, broad concepts and requires us to bring it down to a detailed level of understanding, to write it out, make it clear, be more logical, rational, specific. What are the details here? How exactly are you going to go about that? Or how exactly did you arrive at that belief system? What is your source? More specifically, what is your primary source that is credible? Because, for example, Wikipedia is not a primary source of information. Wikipedia is where information collects, and then you go down to the footnotes, and those footnotes are what lead you to the primary source, or perhaps lead you to a secondary source, which leads you to another primary source of where the information stemmed from. This is Gemini. Cite your resources. Tell me where you're getting this information. Where is this coming from? Because I want to understand it. So Jupiter being in Gemini requires us to take these broader notions, opinions, understandings, philosophies, ideologies, and make them understandable at a pedestrian level, at a basic level, make them teachable, help us connect the dots at how you arrived at a certain conclusion, and also allow us to slow down the energy so that we're not scattered and going off in all these directions without the necessary focus. Now, yes, Gemini can focus. It is possible for Gemini energy to focus when there is an interest, curiosity, when you're really intrigued by something. But if that's not the case, then the Gemini energy dashes off in another direction and can even be split in where that focus goes. So what I'm seeing energetically here with this Jupiter retrograde in Gemini is that we are being asked to realign our minds, and I'm seeing it too as that third eye chakra and the throat chakra, realign these parts of our energy systems with greater clarity and to ensure we're thinking through our opinions, our ideals, our belief systems, and be willing to have conversations that maybe ask uncomfortable questions and require you to get to more of the source of how a belief system has developed, where it stemmed from, where did you learn that, where did you observe that, did you have experiences with that? How did that come about? And this can be an opportunity to remain more curious and detached about not only ourselves, but each other. Because all too often, that Jupiter will unconsciously step in and determine what is right or wrong, what is true or false, what is good and bad. And because each of us individually has had very different life experiences that have shaped us and formed us, there is a part of ourselves that can only understand a differing perspective so much. Because if it's not your lived experience, how much can you really understand it? How far can you really go in seeing where that person is coming from? So one of the keys with Jupiter retrograde in Gemini is to understand how we're going to see more differences of lived experiences coming to light. And it's looking at how much we put our energy into shaping, forming, convincing another that there has to be a right or wrong. Now that's because Jupiter can be highly persuasive. Jupiter can be very much about, come over here, let me show you some things, let me teach you about the world. There can be a condescending energy in too much Jupiter. There can be a sense of, I know this better than you, kiddo. Let me just give you some insights here. And yet this is where we've got to step away and detach and understand that each person is working with their own information and knowledge based on exactly where they are. And it's none of our business to intrude or think that we have to sell or convince them otherwise. So there's a big theme of detachment, intellectual detachment, and allowing people to have their own choices, their own viewpoints, and their own perspectives without needing us to agree or to determine if it's true or false, right or wrong. And as I say this, I know that you can think of examples and you're like, but Molly, there's things that are really wrong and there's things that are really bad. And so yes, I would agree. There are things that are morally and ethically wrong. And that's also Jupiter's domain. What is our current take on what is moral and what is ethical in the human experience? Jupiter also relates to justice and what is truly fair. And that isn't always something for us at an individual level to determine or know. And so these are part of the complications of Jupiter in Gemini, where the best use of the energy is to keep the conversation going or to stay curious and detached. And as I say that, I'm getting the visual of a brain and the neurological programming that we each possess, and that there's different parts of the brain that is more alive for some of us than for others. And I'm seeing the front of the brain being very alive and active. I'm seeing a lot of energy there. I believe that's the frontal lobe. And then I'm seeing these smaller, more specialized areas of the brain that are being ramped up with higher consciousness that we are fully owning and taking responsibility for. And I'm seeing it as, and of course, I'm no neurologist, but I'm seeing the amygdala, which is where we process emotions. I'm seeing the pituitary gland that relates to metabolism and hormones. And I believe it's known as the master gland of the endocrine system. And I'm really seeing energy around the pineal gland. And that looks really big. Like just what I'm seeing intuitively, there's big, bright energy there. And I feel that this Jupiter retrograde in Gemini is asking us to activate more parts of ourselves that are not only coming online, but want to be involved in a story of your soul's growth. And so when we look at these energies, I would say that there are parts of ourselves that are highly active now, and they're almost waiting for us to listen to them more, to integrate more of their wisdom and capabilities. So that might be one intention you hold for this Jupiter retrograde in Gemini experience, that you're allowing more parts of your soul's wisdom to come online and be active with you and for you on a daily basis. Gemini is the daily energies we experience. Gemini relates to our immediate environment, the people we have conversations with regularly, the ways that we interact, what we look at, what we do. It's the apps on your phone. It's the websites you visit. It's the things you take care of. It's also your transportation, where you get to where you need to go and how fast you get there. There's a lot of energy with Gemini. And as Jupiter retrogrades in this sign, there's a slowdown of the Gemini energies. It's meant to go slower so that you can consciously review, what am I doing? What am I doing on a daily basis? Is this worth my energy and my mental focus? Is this necessary? Because Gemini can definitely go down those rabbit holes and follow all those tangents. And it's the kind of thing where you find yourself clicking around and an hour has passed and you're like, what was I doing? What was I doing? So this is about coming back to center and allowing yourself to be more mindful and conscious of your energy, but also by calling in these higher parts of your mind that are waiting for you to bring them in more, to listen to them, because I feel like they're highly active. I feel like they're giving us messages, but we're so used to overriding them because there's a ding on our phone or something's going on over here, or your favorite song is playing all of a sudden on Spotify. It's like, no, stop that mental chatter, which is actually exhausting us. And that's the other thing here about this Jupiter in Gemini retrograde. The mental fatigue is real. Too many choices, too much going on, too much to tend to or take care of. And it could feel like you're drained. But I feel that these other parts of our brain and of our operating systems are providing you with new ways to handle the information and to proceed throughout your day, knowing that your energy can rise above it. Because the Gemini is scattered and restless, and I'm getting the visual of the Flintstones car, for those of you who recall that cartoon, where in order to get somewhere, you had to scamper really fast with your own feet. That's what was the motor in the vehicle. This is the energy of, you know what? How can I coast through this? How can I get to where I need to go and stay on top of my day, but not feel like I have to be working twice as fast to do so? The slowdown is needed and necessary, but it can be frustrating for Gemini because Gemini is like, why don't I have that answer yet? Why haven't they responded to me yet? Why is this conversation on pause? Or what am I waiting on? And why is it taking so long to wait? Expect to wait. Expect the pause. And then what happens is that something within you will feel anxious, worried. The nervous system can get racked up because we don't live in a society that practices waiting. We want it now. We expect it now. We shouldn't have to wait an extra 5 minutes. We do not live in a world that allows us to calm, ground, and wait. And that's also a very important part of how we can then hear more of those messages coming through in these other parts of our minds. So all of these themes are going to be quite strong when Mercury is in Sagittarius and then stations retrograde. Because what's going to happen is this Mercury in Sag is going to have an ongoing dance of an opposition to Jupiter in Gemini retrograde. This begins at 18 degrees. So 18 degrees of Gemini, 18 degrees of Sagittarius on November 17th. They will stay in an opposition into December. I'm going to say about December 9th, which is when Mercury is then back at 10 degrees of Sagittarius. And so this is when there will be travel delays and cancellations, big changes in transportation systems, airlines, movements. Your best laid plans go awry. There's also the influence of Jupiter in Gemini increasing to the second exact square to Saturn in Pisces. Now that will happen December 23rd and 24th, so I'll get to that in just a moment. But know that that energy is also going to be a part of this Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius too. So 3 parts of your chart in these 3 mutable signs of Gemini, Sagittarius, and Pisces are where dynamic changes are happening, and you should just expect things to fall through, to not go as planned, to stay flexible, to look at, okay, what's my backup choice? What's my second option? How else can I get there? What's the other approach to take? Stay creative, stay open. Also stay in your intuitive messages that could lead you to a great next choice that the logical mind would not have planned. Like this can allow you to open up to more spiritual guidance and more miracles that the mind blocks off. I am going to spin it like that. I'm going to put that positive spin on it because we live in a cosmos of unlimited potentials, options, and miracles. Reminds me of that movie with Steve Martin and John Candy, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, which, by the way, all of those systems are probably going to be impacted by these energies in mid to late November into December. Basically, it's not good travel energy. And I know that's hard to hear because it's during the holidays, and in the US, that's when we're going to have Thanksgiving, the extended Thanksgiving holiday. Mercury retrograde is November 25th, starting at 22 degrees of Sagittarius, and lasts until December 16th, going back to 6 degrees of Sag. Then, of course, we also will have Mars retrograde starting in December. So these energies are asking us to slow down. Slow it down, stay in a place of adaptable outcomes and directions, and to look at how well you handle that, honestly. Because truthfully, not everyone handles that well. Not everyone can switch and pivot easily. Not everyone's energy is designed for that. And that's fair to say. And I can honestly attest to it right now because I'm getting ready to evacuate the state of Florida. I'm recording this podcast now. I'm pre-recording my Wednesday podcast, and I'm getting on a plane here. So I've had to stay very nimble. This is the energy we're in. It goes into next year. So look at how you're able to make a different choice as needed. I know that's extreme to use a hurricane as an example, but it's going to be showing up at work. It's going to be showing up in the office and what you do on a daily basis. The project you've been working on, what if it's scrapped? All the effort you've put into something and then it's delayed. The big thing you've been doing, it's no longer a company priority, funding ran out. These are disappointing changes, and that is part of the energy as well. And I feel a responsibility to say that. Like, there is the energy of, damn it, that's a bummer. Shucks, no, I don't like that. I don't agree. And yet it's what we're in, and it's what we're going to be in, especially into next year. So if you can access that deeper part of yourself, again, I'm going right back to the brain, right back to the pineal gland that is wanting you to listen to it and access its wise navigational guidance, you're going to have new answers, new remedies, new plans, and new options show up. I also feel, because now I'm being directed to the amygdala, we're going to have to be working with that emotional response and reaction and take responsibility for it so that we are owning our energy, not making a situation worse or, not exaggerating it either in our head. And look at how quickly we can return to acceptance. The acceptance of this is what is. And that's one of the messages of this Saturn in Pisces. Saturn in Pisces is bringing us back to what we can master and be responsible for in all of our energy fields, and to understand that we don't have control over everything. We can't expect ourselves to. It can also be way too easy to do spiritual bypassing with our human experiences. We are here in the physical and we are going through things that are quite big, collectively, individually. It is a big roller coaster ride that isn't going to slow down, and we're in it. And so we deserve to honor what we feel. We deserve to honor and respect our humanness, and also go to our higher spiritual wisdom that knows we have our divine consciousness. We are moving through significant cycles of change on this planet. We chose to be here, to be a part of the amplification of more light on the planet, that we wanted to show up to participate and give to this grand changeover. And at a soul level, we also know everything happens for a reason, and whatever unfolds, I will make the best choice. It will lead me to my next choice. It will be okay. It will lead me to the next cycle of blessings, the next cycle of manifestations. And if you can maintain both parts of yourself with love and respect, both your humanness and your spiritual self working together in harmony, that's one of the more healthier ways to move through these energies. Because as things continue to shift and change on this planet, we are the leaders now. The light workers, those who have been doing their healing work, who have been aware of energy and dynamics and whatever it is you've been focusing on in your own journey, is exactly the medicine you can share and offer to others. But going back to what I said at the start of this podcast, it's about a conversation. It's simply sharing the information. This is what I chose. This is what I've learned. This is what I've been through. And knowing that the other person then, of course, will make the changes or choices that fit them. And you can't be overly invested in what those choices might be, which is certainly easier said than done. But we're living in this energy that can feel so fragmented, right? So fragmented that what we can do is go up higher, pull all of your energy together, feel it as a cohesive unit of creative potentials, empowered energies, like just even to feel a cohesive love frequency within yourself. And that's how you hold it together. You go higher into the higher frequencies. And that's where you could feel stronger, clearer, brighter. I've got this. I'm going to know exactly what to do because I'm allowing these other parts of my mind to come online, to be parts of my energy I trust, and to know that that is one of the best gifts I can give myself at this time on the planet. And I do feel that this Jupiter retrograde in Gemini is going to highlight that for many of us. Now, at a more practical level, you would look in your natal chart at where you have 11 to 22 degrees of Gemini, as this is where Jupiter is covering those parts of your chart. Maybe it's one house, 2 houses, even 3 houses, depending on whichever house system you use. And Jupiter is going to expand it, put it under a magnifying glass, and you will not miss it. You will not miss what you need to see during a Jupiter retrograde, but you're also promised more ideas, solutions, and opportunities. Jupiter does want to make it easier for us, but it requires us to be open to what we didn't know, what we didn't foresee. So keep in mind that this area of your chart is where you will be redoing, revisiting, reprioritizing. It is a retrograde planet, and because it's in Gemini, I just feel like it's going to be a giant Mercury retrograde, especially during Mercury retrograde. So we'll have to really apply our spiritual gifts, use our spiritual toolkits, understand the energetics, and really walk the talk of what it means to be in your power when everything is in flux, shifting and changing around you. So now that we've discussed many of the overarching themes, let's also focus on one of the beneficial energies that is going to come up for us as this Jupiter stations retrograde in Gemini at 21 degrees and syncs up with Chiron retrograde in Aries also at 21 degrees. These two planets are going to be traveling retrograde together, basically pacing each other as they move from 21 degrees back to 19 degrees. This occurs into the middle of November. Then Jupiter keeps moving backwards and separates from Chiron. So in October and November, with the support of this Chiron retrograde in Aries, there are going to be new insights into what you're healing, how to go about it, new information presented, or rather information coming back around that you missed the first time. This Jupiter is going to be now giving messages directly to that Chiron in Aries that is uplifting. These are messages that want you to tap into maybe a hidden remedy or a hidden medicine, something that was not seen the first time. Jupiter in Gemini does things twice, so maybe you do plan A and then plan B, but something connects here that's designed to be supportive, kind, informative, and healing. So stay open to what comes through, hidden under a rock or shows up in the lost and found. Or maybe you just feel that energetic nudge to look into something one more time and make sure you didn't miss an important fact or detail. This Chiron is also supporting Jupiter retrograde in Gemini by reminding yourself to go easy on what you don't know. Don't expect yourself to have it all figured out, even though you might have that sense of I should know what to do, or I should have a plan, or I should know what the plan is, because Gemini loves a plan. This is where you can just lean back and relax into, I will figure it out as it comes up. I know that I'll trust myself and my body consciousness, which is also what Chiron in Aries is connecting us with on a deeper level. So listen to where the energy is rising, where it feels most beneficial and supportive, because that could be Chiron sending some wisdom to what Jupiter and Gemini didn't see coming or didn't consider. The fire sign of Aries gets things moving. Let's take action. Let's move ahead. The air sign of Gemini has the ideas, the concepts, and ability to communicate what that looks like. But because both are retrograde, it's actually wiser to sit with it. And that could feel like you're wrestling part of yourself. Both of these planets in retrograde is a slowdown. It's an internalization for you to integrate whatever it is for you, whatever that idea, solution, plan, whatever it is. Allow it to marinate, integrate, and breathe deeply with it. This also can help to calm both of these energies, because both Aries and Gemini want to go fast, want to get there sooner than later, value speed, and could be frustrated by the slowdown. So internalizing the energy, breathing deeply, allowing yourself to just trust the present moment without having to rush through it is also what is prescribed with this sextile. So two areas of your chart are connected here, where you have Jupiter retrograde in Gemini, especially 21 to 19 degrees, and then Chiron retrograde in Aries, also 21 to 19 degrees. These two houses in your chart are syncing up. They're talking in a new way. It's supportive energy, as I mentioned. And this is where you could see something in a whole new way that you would have missed if you were moving too fast. So this is where Jupiter retrograde in Gemini is actually benefiting you the most. It's connecting you with that Chiron in Aries. And something just came to mind. Remember back in April when the Aries solar eclipse at 19 degrees was exactly conjunct Chiron? Chiron is returning to 19 degrees, but now Jupiter's in the conversation. You could have a turnaround or this energy that I've just talked about directly related to that Aries solar eclipse at 19 degrees in your chart. And there could be breakthroughs, new understandings, a sense of that's why I went through what I had to go through, which can be a feeling that comes up when we have strong Chiron energy. Chiron is where we feel insecure and vulnerable, and we need assistance in some manner. And this Jupiter could be providing you with that assistance because of this retrograde. So I hope that gives you something hopeful to stay aware of and to connect with, as well as to think back on what you've been moving through since that Aries solar eclipse on April 8th, which feels like 5 lifetimes ago now. But that can help you with the timeline of developments as well as themes that are coming up at this time. Also remember that the Chiron influence is about being kind to yourself and knowing you don't have to do it all on your own. I also feel that with this strong energy of the mutable signs, we need to stay compassionate to ourselves and to others, to not lose our ability to understand that this human ride is wild at times. We do the best we can with what we have. We're always in a learning phase. And the more that we can allow ourselves to soften into those parts of ourselves that understand this, the better we're going to be for it. So remember that with these energies, as I've described, with the changes and disruptions and things not going as planned, we can still be in our hearts. We can still be in our compassion and our ability to connect with one another, especially from a sense of kindness and acceptance. I will continue to touch on these Jupiter retrograde and Gemini energies on my Wednesday podcast episode. That's where we talk about the weekly energies, so be sure and join me there because that's where we get more granular with these aspects and the themes of the present moment. As always, thank you so much for joining me. It is a great honor to connect with you through this wild ride, and thank you for your time, energy, and presence today. I'll be back every Monday and Wednesday for a new podcast episode. You can also find all of my latest courses and astrology workshops over at mollymccord.online if you are interested in developing your astrological understandings even more. Take good care, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon.